Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Adam Vandewater. I'm the Executive Director at the Transbay Joint Powers Authority, and I want to set the stage a little bit about who we are, where we are, what we've accomplished to date in the first phase of the Transbay program, and then I'll turn over the presentation to Alfonso Rodriguez, who's our DTX Project Director, who will be leading the effort to complete the Transbay program in phase 2, which is our downtown rail extension, or what we're calling the portal. And you see a rendering of that here, which is connecting rail into the basement of our existing Salesforce Transit Center. So next slide, please. So by way of background, hopefully many of you in the Bay Area chapters have been to the building and are familiar with the context and the neighborhood south of Market. You'll see the 5.5-acre rooftop park of our building in the aerial photograph to the right. But by way of background, this is the same plot of land that has served Transbay service since the original Transbay terminal opened in 1939. That building suffered some damage in the 1989 earthquake and prompted a discussion of what to do for its long-term replacement. In 1999, the San Francisco voters approved a ballot measure to extend Caltrain, its northern terminus, which if you've been up and down the peninsula know, stops at the edge of town, down by the San Francisco Giants ballpark, into downtown and into that building. And then 2 years later, the Transbay Joint Powers Authority was created under state law as a joint powers of the city and county. As well as our primary operators, Alameda County Transportation, AC Transit, High-Speed Rail, which has a shared use agreement with Caltrain along that alignment, and Caltrain itself, which itself is a joint powers board of the 3 counties. And the state law charged our agency with the design, construction, and operation of its eventual replacement and all the associated facilities. So we are not transit operators, though we work on their behalf as infrastructure managers to create the infrastructure you'll see here and what we're planning going forward. Next slide. So this is, I think, one of the more telling historical views here. If you came to this neighborhood of south of Market up until about 2010, you would have seen the image on the top left. We were very much the edge of downtown San Francisco. Close to the center, the horizontal low building there was the Transbay terminal. It was one of the most utilized transportation terminals in North America in the 1940s when the Key system came on electrified rail on the lower deck of the Bay Bridge. But it was surrounded by these sweeping on and off ramps from the bridge and a lot of surface parking lots, low-rise commercial warehousing with the majority of downtown to its north. Since the Transbay program, and we relocated we created a temporary terminal and then demolished the building starting in 2010 and did the construction excavation of the new building from 2010 to 18. The neighborhood has changed dramatically. So you see the after in the lower part here. That is the new Transbay district. The city and county expressly upzoned several of these parcels to be the tallest buildings in San Francisco in order to create more value capture to fund that construction. We also simplified the on and off ramp to one bridge coming in on the west end of the building, creating a number of vertical development parcels and wholesale reimagined the neighborhood. So a lot of the talk today in the press is about the future of downtown. And I see this program very much as on the vanguard of more mixed use downtown. We have over 4,000 units of housing at 35% affordable in the Transbay district, about 15,000 residents within a quarter-mile walk of our building. And then the associated retail, recreation, and other uses here. So we're not as solely reliant on a downtown office worker as the financial district to our north has been in the past. So next slide. So the first phase of the program was really to leverage that vertical development to create the transit center. It's known as the Salesforce Transit Center because like a lot of our arenas, we like to patronize it. We signed a naming rights agreement with our largest private employer in San Francisco, Salesforce. And it is a 6-story, 4-city block long transit center that sits again on that same location as the Transbay terminal. You see a cross section here on the left, the aerial in the center. And what we'll have Alfonso present to you is how we fill that existing basement in the right-hand view, which is a rail station and mezzanine beneath the building that's not yet open to the public, with Caltrain and high-speed rail. The total cost of phase 1, the transit center itself, was about $2.25 billion. It was all funded by state, local, regional funds. So largely the development opportunity and other sources, plus a $400 million federal grant under the American Reinvestment and Recovery Act to invest in that train box in advance, so we could do the construction ground up, not top down, and try to retrofit under an existing operating bus facility. Next slide. That construction, as I mentioned, took a little over 8 years to complete, from 2010 to 18, and it created over 13,000 local jobs and another 10,500 around the Bay Area. And between sources of labor and materials, there were direct impacts to 47 of the 50 US states. So you see some of the suppliers and manufacturers listed here. This is a powerful slide when we go to Washington and talk about this project as a job generator and as a project of regional, state, and national significance, which it's been designated at many levels for many years. The only states that were not represented here are Vermont, Hawaii, and and Alaska, I believe, were the only 3 that are not represented in terms of jobs and materials. Next slide. So being the architectural designers that you are, we're very proud of the architectural wonder that the building it is. So the architect was Cesar Pelli, Fred Clark, Pelli and Associates out of New Haven and New York City. And we did a design competition, which they were the winners of, because they proposed really an antithesis to what had been here before. So if you're a longtime Bay Area resident and you had been to the old Transbay terminal, there was regular service. It was a hub of commuting activity, but it was a pretty utilitarian, largely concrete, reaching the end of its useful life box. The proposal here is obviously the antithesis. The jewel of the building is the 5.5-acre rooftop park. There's a half-mile perimeter walking path that's well utilized all operating hours of the building. And then inside the building is really grand civic architecture filled with natural light and ventilation, such that there's very little artificial lighting required. You go into the grand hall shown here on the top left, and you're welcomed by a very expansive space filled with public art. The ground floor there is Julie Chang's Secret Garden terrazzo floor. We have Jenny Holzer's scrolling white light LED display above that. And then the real architectural feature of the building, which is the Grand Oculus, which goes from the rooftop park 70 feet above the sidewalk, all the way down to, you see the kind of blue glass at the base of that oculus, which is a glass floor, which brings natural light down to the mezzanine below and all the way down to the train level beneath that. So it extends over 120 vertical feet to bring that light down to the levels below. The building itself has been the recipient of numerous design awards, which I won't read entirely, but the AIA has been very receptive to the building and has awarded it merit awards, awards of excellence, honor awards from various chapters and national. It was the recipient of the Architecture Master Prize for Mixed Use Architecture and Transportation in 2018, the National Terrazzo and Mosaic Association for the artwork there in the Grand Hall, the Silver Award in Transportation from the World Architecture News Awards, the Architizer, Chicago Athenaeum. There's a fairly lengthy list. And we're very proud of the design. The signature elements you really see here is that Grand Hall and Oculus, but also the waving exterior that has a perforated metal panel, which is a non-repeating rhombus pattern designed by Sir Roger Penrose, who was an Oxford professor and Stephen Hawking's mentor. He gifted that to us, and it kind of really defines the wavy nature of the exterior of the building and the park above. And because we opened in 2018, and we've been through the global pandemic the last 3 years, we have a lot of residents and international visitors who are just now discovering the building. So it's exciting to go walk the 4 blocks of the rooftop park or bus deck or through that Grand Hall, and you'll hear language from around the world as people come here, not just as transit riders, but those curious of, the largest elevated park in the Western United States and some of the new signature elements that really activate this part of South of Market. Next slide. So we're not just a transportation provider, we're not just a park, but we have really a lot of free public programming for the neighborhood. This is the largest neighborhood park in South of Market. And as I mentioned, there's 15,000 residents within walking distance of us. And so we serve a lot of purposes. We have 8 operators, bus operators off of the 3rd floor bus deck directly connecting to the Bay Bridge, or at ground floor serving intra-city San Francisco or the North and South Bays that don't use the I-80 bus bridge. And then we are a block and a half away from the BART connections on Market Street and are working to connect our 10th and 11th providers with Caltrain and high-speed rail. We do about 620 free activations in the park every year. So pretty much every day of the year, you'll see some of the activations pictured here, from Bollywood dance and swing dancing to high intensity interval training to bird walking and plant identification to toddler Thursdays and yoga in the park, all free and largely paid by surrounding property owners through a community benefit district. We have 116,000 square feet of retail, mostly at the ground floor level. You see Tycoon Kitchen here that opened within the last quarter. And we've actually managed to open 3 restaurants in the last quarter and a rooftop beer garden, San Francisco's own Bear Bottle, serving about 20 beers on tap up in the rooftop park. So we've done reasonably, I'd say very well, given the economic conditions, and provide opportunity for those who are living, working, or even passing through the neighborhood. At the mezzanine level of the building where I am today in our office, we also have a Kaiser Care Essentials facility where you can get vaccinations and all but specialty care. We have a Fitness SF as our anchor tenant, a gym that does some of the programming in the park. We have a dentist, we have a fertility clinic, we have a lot of activation above the ground floor retail. So we're an active site, and we also host large-scale public gatherings. We're the host of the opening day of San Francisco Beer Week. We had 1,500 people in the park. We did a spring fling a few weeks back where we had a egg hunt in the park and had over 1,000 people. And we're continuing to program both private and public events coming forward to cover some of those operating costs. Next slide. So you heard me mention the connections. So we have often referred to the Salesforce Transit Center as the Grand Central Station of the West, and that's for a reason. We are the only area in the Bay Area with so many operators connecting directly in one building. We currently have 8 connections and are a block from BART with a future planned subterranean pedestrian connection. And the portal project you'll hear more about here in a second will bring the 9th and 10th, shown in the red and blue and yellow dashed lines to the south, that'll connect along the peninsula through Silicon Valley to Gilroy, and then ultimately down to LA Union Station and Anaheim through high-speed rail. So this is a place where, regardless of where you are in the Bay Area, you can take a mode of transportation transfer and get to really anywhere, both within the Bay and ultimately within the state. The region has really been working for some decades now to provide this seamless connection. So if you're in the transportation space, you hear a lot of Sacramento talk about seamless Bay Area, and that's everything from seamless contactless payment, where you use one Clipper card for multiple systems, to seamless transfers within one building, and all in service of a vision of ringing the Bay with high quality, affordable, seamless rail connections. So BART has been working throughout the East Bay and is working on BART to Silicon Valley to close that connection between the southernmost blue line here and those red and blue and yellow dashed through BART to Silicon Valley phase 2. And then we are the kind of key connection near that yellow star that would bring that conventional gauge rail, so Caltrain and high-speed rail, into downtown and facilitate a future Transbay connection through Link 21. So I think this might be my last slide. We want to show you a little video of what is to come, which is, we think of the Transbay program really in 3 segments. One is the wholesale reimagining of the neighborhood, I briefly described. 2 is the construction of the Salesforce Transit Center, which is now complete. And 3 is connecting it in with a subway system into our existing lower level train box, which is the downtown rail extension portal. And we want to show you a little video of what that could look like before Alfonso walks you through those details, and we open it up to a Q&A.
San Francisco, now ranked first among world cities in innovation, is undergoing a dramatic urban transformation. The city's population is expected to grow by 60% over the next 50 years. Sustainable growth requires mobility, the ability to efficiently connect people to work, culture, and recreation. The Transbay program is a visionary transportation and urban renewal project and major investment, not only for San Francisco, but for the Bay Area and all of California. The program has reached a major milestone, the opening of one of the largest multimodal transit centers in the United States, the Salesforce Transit Center. The 1.2 million square foot transportation hub spans nearly 4 city blocks and will eventually integrate 11 transportation services. Fulfilling a long-standing promise to voters, the next phase of the program will build the downtown rail extension to bring commuter rail into a new underground train station at the center. The new station will also be the Northern California terminus of the state's future high-speed train system. The DTX will allow Caltrain to link downtown San Francisco with downtown San Jose and Silicon Valley with a one-seat ride, reducing travel times by up to an hour and attracting thousands of new riders. California's new high-speed trains will run between downtown Los Angeles and downtown San Francisco in less than 3 hours, with stops in the Central Valley and San Jose. Passengers arriving at the transit center will step directly into the heart of San Francisco's new downtown, home to many of the nation's largest tech companies and the densest residential neighborhood west of Chicago. With the population of the region expected to grow by nearly a half in the coming years, high-speed trains will be vital in connecting the state's increasingly interdependent communities. Like other world-class metropolitan regions, from London to Beijing, our region must continue to invest in transportation to keep its economy growing and maintain its competitive edge and world standing. No project is more vital in achieving this vision than the Downtown Rail Extension, Phase 2 of the Transbay program. .
Great. So if we could go to the next slide, and I'll turn it over to our DTX project director, Alfonso Rodriguez.
Hey, thank you, Adam. I love that video. I mean, it really captures what we're trying to accomplish, and our team is just having all kinds of success with the progress that we've been making recently. And I'll cover that in a couple of slides. But first, I wanted to kind of share some of the elements of the project. You know, in the slide that you saw before, our name, the portal, it's the entrance, it's the gateway to the region. And I think hopefully you see that in the connection that it'll provide. That extends the existing Caltrain rail service that terminates at the bottom of the slide over at the existing Fourth and King rail yard station. We intercept that surface track work and we pick it up into, or we bring it down, excuse me, into a U-wall and down below grade over on Townsend Street, which is the horizontal green line. It will connect to a new station below ground called our Fourth and Townsend station. Again, it's bringing that electrified California high-speed rail and Caltrain service all the way up to Second Street into the Salesforce Transit Center. So the project includes that new station below grade, the tunnel that connects that Fourth and King terminus all the way to the train box that actually exists below the Salesforce Transit Center. You saw an image of that cold shell earlier. We've got a few ventilation structures, and what I wanted to highlight here also are the arrows that exist at the east end of the box. There is that other project in the conceptual development phase known as the Link 21, where it's looking to potentially bring heavy gauge commuter rail from the east side of the bay into a second bay crossing. And one of the alternatives is to connect to the east end of our Salesforce Transit Center station box. So there is that potential down the road, certainly the capability to do so. But our project, though, is defined as shown with the tunnel, the new station box, and the station fit out for both elements. Why don't we go to the next slide? Here's some of the renderings. I mean, you saw the beautiful imagery of the built Salesforce Transit Center above ground, but our challenge was to try to bring that experience below ground in the mezzanine level and the platform level. And so here's some illustrations of what it could look like by our station architect, Kelly Clark Partners. That's a tongue twister. What we try to do is to bring that light and airy feeling, the same type of patterns that people exhibit or experience up top, and bring it down below. You know, it's somewhat of a challenge to get a subterranean station box well lit, but this is what we're striving for. That station box is already sized for 3 center platforms and 6 tracks to accommodate Caltrain and then high-speed rail when it's available. So we do have a mezzanine level. That's that pre-ticketing level that offers a retail space opportunity. And then, of course, the platform level for train boarding. Why don't we go to the next slide? So, you know, we've prepared a number of grant opportunities. And what we're finding, though, is the benefits of our project are actually quite significant. The vehicles miles that we can remove from one of the most congested highways in the United States, Highway 101, gives us some really good greenhouse gas reduction capacity. And in those grant opportunities that look to improve our environment with greenhouse reduction, the portal does very well. We've estimated about 90,000 daily boardings once high-speed rail is part of the system, simply because we are making that connection to all of those other transit connections across the bay, having that Caltrain service extend into that hub, our hub, the Salesforce Transit Center. I did talk about the 2 new stations that will be part of the alignment, and Adam talked a little bit about the success of job creation that we had in phase 1. We expect similar success with the completion of the portal project. We go to the next slide, please. So we've come a long way. Just at the beginning of the call, I was listening to somebody talk about renderings of our project as early as 2008. I'll start by saying that we do have a fully environmentally cleared project. We received our federal record of decision in July of 2019, and that really allowed us to get into some serious project development activities. We're actually pretty close to completing that. We entered the project development phase of the FTA grant. It's called a Capital Investment Grant New Starts Program. We're currently still in that project development phase, but we have made the request to advance to the engineering phase. So in the bottom, we show where we are in our timeline. We're pretty much wrapping up our project development, which includes completion of 30% design, a new bottoms-up estimate that we presented to our board in the FTA earlier this year, a schedule that shows a revenue service date at the end of 2032. But when we get into the engineering phase, we reach another milestone in the grant. And that's really when we begin to negotiate our final full funding grant agreement, which we expect to obtain in the spring of 2025. But more importantly, it gives us authorities to actually begin to let and begin construction. So some of those construction packages I'll show you in a moment in another slide, but here you can see that we look to begin putting those contracts out on the street as early as the end of this year, with advanced works construction starting before the heavy construction starts, which is in the summer of 2025. So our construction bar begins with some of those advanced utility relocation, site demolition opportunities, but the heavy construction actually begins in 2025. Why don't we go to the next slide, please? So here's a look at how those contract packages are going to be let. And I'll start with some professional services opportunities. In fact, very soon, we plan on releasing a new program management, construction management combined professional services contract. We are looking to secure and have that contract awarded early next year, in the spring of next year. And then actually around that award time, we will begin advertisement of some of our early procurements for advanced utility relocation, site demolition. In the box there below the PMCM procurement is the potential to create a CM bench, smaller contract opportunities that would work with our PMCM consulting team. Below that, we show a station design procurement. And so that, I think, might be of interest to this group. Our board has asked that we provide a procurement opportunity for station design fit out. So that's what that procurement represents. That procurement would start towards the end of this calendar year and be awarded mid-year next year. We also have our larger contracts, and I mentioned already the advanced procurement, the advanced contracts for utility relocation, site demolition, but our very large contracts are going to be delivered through progressive design build, and that's for station box excavation and tunneling, and then those vent shafts. A progressive design build brings us a new engineer of record, so that engineer will be completing design from 30 to full design package for construction. And it provides that interactive opportunity with not only that engineer, our existing general engineering consultant, but also the contractor, so that we can price together something that we're all aligned around and have that cooperation on design completion that allows for more effective construction. We're looking at two separate contract packages, one for systems and track work and the other for that station fit out construction. We're looking to use the construction manager general contractor, or otherwise known as CMGC approach, that provides us a little bit more design control for those elements that we really require to have that design control. Caltrain, our operator, would certainly wants to have a hands-on approach for their systems and track work that will be built. So CMGC makes sense for that. And then of course, station fit out. We want to ensure that we have that experience that people appreciate and enjoy above ground, bringing it below ground within our station boxes. So that's kind of our procurement approach. Next slide, please. The board adopted, I think, earlier this year, late last year, our new DBE SBE goals, and we will be incorporating them in our procurements, professional services, and construction. The participation levels are goals, but they're stated here on the slide. Our agency, though, is trying to ensure participation from all segments of our professional and construction communities. And so meaningful participation is near and dear to our agency and a priority for us here. So why don't we go to the next slide, please? Oh, I guess that takes us to the end in Q&A. I'd be happy to answer your questions. If you've got any for Adam, we can jump back to the slides to point out some details if you like. But Shonda, maybe I turn it back to you, and maybe we can take some questions.
Yes, if you have questions, just use the icon and raise your hand or put it in the chat. We can just call on you to unmute. I don't see any questions. I know there's a lot of compliments on the presentation as far as the look and the video.
Looks like Remy has his hand up.
Oh, okay. I don't see. Okay, right. Remy, you can unmute and ask your question.
I got a question. It seems like, you know, I heard on the news recently that the high-speed rail project that was approved by the voters, I think it was approved at $33 billion, and it's now escalated to $133 billion, extra $100 billion, and it's currently unfunded. So what's the contingency plan if high-speed rail kind of hits a roadblock in terms of funding? But I know we have the Caltrain electrification funded, so just kind of wanted to see how that would fit into the whole process. And by the way, great presentation. It was fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
Great. I'll take a first stab at that, and great question. Thank you, Remy. A couple of points. First of all, the Transbay program, dates back, as you saw, many decades. The program itself was initially one program, and it was initially just to connect Caltrain into downtown. It was subsequently modified to include high-speed rail. High-speed rail is, by many understandings, the mega project of mega projects. It is one of the largest transportation undertakings in the United States, and it has significant tunneling, significant numbers of jurisdictions and land acquisitions to be realized. If high-speed rail was fully funded today, which we know, and Remy, you acknowledged it is not, they could deliver service into the basement of our building in 2033. So it's really a matter of resources at the state level to do this. What I like to point out is, despite those costs, and they are significant costs to complete the system, I always like to look at it in the context of, if not high-speed rail, then what? The High-Speed Rail Authority annually puts out their business plan that looks at updated costs and project milestones and status. And maybe one or two business plans ago, they did an analysis that said, if not for high-speed rail, then we would need an alternative. Assuming the future growth of California and the long-term competitiveness of places like San Francisco and San Jose and the Central Valley and LA, we would have to build something like 4,200 lane miles along Highway 5, excuse me, and expand SFO, Oakland, Burbank, LAX to the tune of several new runways and gates to accommodate that demand. The LA to San Francisco air corridor is one of the busiest in the United States. And, there's a real concern about expanding SFO into SF Bay or around additional development and residential neighborhoods of San Francisco and Millbrae. So the costs are real. I think nobody, at least on our team, fully expects every dollar to be there tomorrow for the High-Speed Rail Authority. They will continue to aggregate those funds, and we will continue to design. So from our side of the fence, Caltrain will be the initial operator. And as you referenced, they are in the process of electrifying today. They are anticipating putting electrified Caltrain with their new electric modular units into revenue service by the end of next year. So they will have many years of electric operational service before we could open this. And as you saw in Alfonso's look ahead, under our current accelerated work schedule, the first train could arrive in that basement in late 2032. So we see this as building the future of our sustainable transportation infrastructure. And as we know from the BART system that just turned 50 and the Market Street corridor and the cable car system, these systems tend to last generations. And so we want to put in place the infrastructure that connects these high value economic productivity zones for 60, 70, 100 years. We certainly expect high-speed rail to be a part of that. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Actually, a quick related question. I think there was talk about a through station, making this a through station for future, I guess, Transbay and, high-speed expansions, way on, at mid-century. So is that current box that's in there, is that able to be adapted for a through station configuration?
That's a good question. And we earlier were tasked to do run-through analysis to see if, what the capacity for a run-through could be, because it's currently configured as a terminal station, but we actually have, believe it or not, a knockout panel at the very east end of the box. That was originally put in there because we have in our baseline plans to extend that box slightly further east, but turns out that with recent value engineering design studies, that would no longer be necessary. However, the earlier rail operations modeling that we conducted for the Portal project showed us that we could actually accommodate trains coming in from the east, if that is determined somewhere down the road that Link 21 would connect into the east end of the box. Physically, the box is a bit shallower than what BART has over at the Embarcadero station, but the Link 21 team is looking at alignment options that would allow for that to work and be able to cross the bay. So I guess that's my long answer of saying it could work if we've already modeled the rail operations to simulate trains running through. Do want to point out, though, that California High-Speed Rail is referring to the Salesforce Transit Center as their terminal station. So really the run-throughs that I'm talking about are bringing commuter rail service along the freight corridor, the capital corridor, if that's the mode that they plan on using to cross the bay into the Salesforce Transit Center. Again, if that's the mode that they select.
For those looking ahead, the Link 21 service is being led by a collaboration between BART and Amtrak Capital Corridor, and they expect to make that alignment decision about this time next year.
And we have another question from Dawn. Dawn, you have to unmute yourself.
Good afternoon. First of all, thank you for this great presentation. It's pretty awesome to see the progress of actually rapidly changing San Francisco for the better. Thank you very much. I was kind of curious about the scheduling of the station design procurement. I mean, understanding that these programs as well as the projects takes very long time. But considering that a lot of the underground activity, as well as a lot of the moving parts, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm kind of thinking that it's kind of early in terms of overall project scale. Am I getting that correctly, or can you give me some information about why you're moving the station fit out to the front end of the project, where a lot of things are still kind of up in the air, if you mind? And then the second part is, if I may, if there's any kind of a budget associated with that portion of the project.
Sure. So there's two procurements that pertain to the station fit out. One is the procurement for design services to complete the station fit out design. And that was the earlier box that would actually be released as early as the end of this year. So that would be advancing the station fit out design from its current 30%. It's not just station fit out though. I mean, I generally refer to it as station fit out, but it's all of the MEP associated with the station box. Now, not the ventilation, fire, life safety, fan requirements for the tunnel and the stations for train operation, but it's all the MEP and the non-train operation systems for a below grade facility. And then of course the finishes and all of the other work associated with completing that cold shell. The reason why the CMGC contract shows so early though, is because we really want to have collaboration and cooperation amongst the three contractors. The progressive design build contractor that'll be building the station box over at Fourth and Townsend in the tunnel, and then connecting into Salesforce. The systems and track work contractors that have to interface with that tunneling contractor. And then of course the station fit out contractor. There are interfaces when you have those different contracts going on concurrently, but we want to benefit from that. We want them to inform each other's design. And again, we want to minimize the risk of having designs that don't function seamlessly across the board. So we on purpose looked to have overlap to facilitate that collaboration and minimize the risks associated with interfaces. From a construction schedule point of view, of course, though, it follows a more logical order, of course, you know, building the station box in the tunnel and then bringing in the track work and having the station finishes and fit out conducted in a logical order. So I hope that answers your question. I think there was a question also about cost estimates, and I think what I'll do is I'll provide that to this group at the end of the presentation. Was it the cost estimate for station fit out, or which element were you interested in?
Personally, first of all, thank you for your response. Makes perfect sense. My specific question regarding the cost was for the station fit out component.
Okay. Yeah, let me give me a couple minutes and then I'll find that and I'll provide that at the end of this call. But we'll take another question.
I didn't see another hand yet. Let me see if I see. And if the callers want to ask a question, I think it's *6 to unmute yourselves. There's 2 phones on.
While you're all looking for your Stump the Chumps questions, I wanted to invite you all to come check it out. If you haven't been to the building, it really is something that presents well in pictures, but really is impactful in person. So both the architecture and the park and the opportunity for downtown revitalization is best realized on foot in person. So the park itself is, calling it a park is almost underselling it. It is a step shy of a botanic gardens. We have about 13,000 mature plants in the park. And as you kind of see in the picture here on the screen, there are different zones, from the striped main plaza there in the middle to the picnic knoll at the top to an amphitheater at the west end and a wetland gardens at the east end. It is absolutely 100% worth the visit. And I think you'll appreciate the undertaking, both from a construction and architecture and a placemaking perspective.
And we have Remy has his hand up again to ask another question. Remy, you can unmute.
Hi, thank you again. Actually, your comment just now just kind of spurred another question related to kind of the sad state of the city and the city in parks and neighborhoods right now being overrun with homeless and thieves and car break-ins and all of that. And yet this park is an oasis. So my first question, one, is it a POPOS, a privately operated public open space? And two, was wondering if the Transbay Authority can work with San Francisco to kind of replicate this incredibly successful model throughout the city. Maybe, this is our, ticket to improving things around town. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great comment, and excuse me, we're very proud of how it does feel like an oasis. So a couple things. POPO, if you're not familiar, is a privately owned public open space. So these are requirements of the city's development code within privately owned buildings. So there are rooftop gardens and parks and terraces and plazas and things throughout the city. And there's, I don't know, north of 100 of them. Ours is publicly owned as the Joint Powers Authority. But it is sort of straddles between a city park, which is, porous and accessible at all hours, and a POPO, which is within a enclosed building and has operating hours. Our building does close overnight, and we have operating hours that go until 9 p.m. in the summer for the rooftop park, and later for the transportation connections for our 8 operators. What lends itself to that safety is we do have on-site both police and uniformed security. So they are our eyes and ears out there that are working on everything from directing visitors through wayfinding to picking up any stray cups or other things throughout the park or the center, to dealing with safety issues. And so we have a fairly unique situation here in that we are a transportation provider, and we have the benefit of the community benefit district, which we co-manage a lot of the activations in the park with our neighboring businesses and the East Cut Community Benefit District. So we have a higher physical presence in the area that would be difficult to sustain it across all city parks. But we also have higher activation and activities here in the building. So very much agree with the sentiment and the feeling of that it is an oasis, and that is by design, that this is the people's building, and we want them to safely and comfortably be able to enjoy it.
Well, and following the presentation, we will send the deck as well as the link to the video to Kristen, and she will share it with the membership and the attendees as well. So you'll have that. If you have any other follow-up questions, Kristen can send them to us, and we will make sure that TJPA has it for any follow-up answers. And we are just happy and excited that both the executive director and the project director from TJPA were here and able to give this very thorough and colorful presentation on this exciting project that is really transforming not only just San Francisco, but this region. So we're excited about that. And then there's another thank you in the chat. And I think that was our last question. So thank you very much. And great job. Thank you for your work, Stevie, with 360 Total Concept and AIA, and bringing this collaborative together with the multi-Bay Area organizations with AIA. So this has been a great pleasure and a great way to start a Memorial Day weekend. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Shonda and team. We do appreciate it. Stevie was instrumental in getting all of these chapters together. So we're glad we were able to make that work.
And I do see one remaining question, Shonda, which is from an old colleague of mine in the city about tour opportunities. And so I wanted to offer two things. One is City Guides, a nonprofit organization, does regular tours of the public parts of the facility. And our team does do occasional tours of the building, including the train box. So if there is an interested group and we have the capacity on the team to go beyond the public version, I would encourage you to reach out to our colleague, the Communications and Legislative Affairs Director, Lily Magis-Wu, who coordinates that program. So happy to get your insights and show off, again, the kind of opportunity of the building.